Hello and welcome to It's So Fabulous. Today I have with me my friend, Eddie Friend, who is a builder. He has Excalibur Building and Construction. And Eddie and I have worked on a number of projects together, and I thought that it would be interesting for you guys to hear all about renovation and what kinds of things go into a renovation, how you should budget, and those sorts of things. So welcome, Eddie. I'm glad to have you here.
Happy to be here.
And since I can't remember all the questions that I'm supposed to ask, I have my little cheat sheet here. A couple of things that I think are really important when a person considers a renovation is, how do they know how to budget? Where do they start in this whole myriad of things to do? What do they do? Do they sit down and say, hey Eddie, what's my budget? Or what do they do? How do they come to you?
Well, a lot of times the best place to start with any project is a wish list.
Okay.
Sitting down from the beginning with that wish list, and when you're working on a renovation, you kind of have to look at what the house will allow you to do, and base your budget on how much of the existing structure you're willing to dismantle to get to what you want it to be. Because a lot of times a lot of your budget is spent in undoing what's there so that you can do what you want to do.
Right. And I know on some of the projects that we've worked together on, sometimes it's more advantageous budget-wise to start from scratch.
Yes.
And how do you help a client make that decision?
I have found that it's best just to be blatantly honest about it. But ultimately it's their decision, and we have had customers that have decided, even though we've recommended that it would probably be less expensive to tear it down and build back all new, they've decided that they just couldn't part with what was there, and we went ahead forward with a major renovation versus a completely new build.
Right. And I know when I worked with clients, I have sometimes even advised them, even though the cost is going to be greater, to stay with the original footprint and the original home, just because sometimes you can save some elements that are charming, and that, you know, if that's what the client is going for, then often there's very little way to replace that.
True.
So I have too found that, you know, sometimes the client's willing to spend a little bit more. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about budget. What do you do with clients when, you know, again, my experience in renovation is that you often go over the budget, or there's so many unforeseen things. How do you prepare a client for that?
Those are the hardest things. A lot of times what we do is we break the budget down into your must-haves, the items that have to do with your foundation and your structure and your roof and all those types of things that aren't any part of the pretty.
Right.
But those are a necessity to get to the pretty. So we try to go through those items and actually put a little extra in the budget in those areas where we think we may run into problems.
Right.
While you can't foresee everything, by planning ahead with a little bit of extra money built in from the beginning, most of the time you can hit that target.
So, and since we're talking about budget, and I'm going to kind of focus on budget today, what kinds of things should people renovate or put into their homes that increase the value of the home?
Well, the two biggest things are still your kitchens and baths. Always the kitchen. It's the heartbeat of the home.
Sure.
It is where everybody eventually ends up hanging out and spending most of their time. So it is always the best place to put your money. Research tells us that you get about 90 to 95% of the dollars spent in the kitchen back in your appraised value. Bathrooms, again, are always good, master bath especially. You can get 80 to 85% of your value back on master bath renovations, as long as you're not going, you know, too far with it. With any project, you can outbuild what the home is with your new additions or with renovating just one part of a home. So a lot of times, just as with your design, as you try to make everything flow through the house, it's important with a renovated space to try and make sure that it still works with the space next to it.
Right. Well, that concludes today's session on renovation. We wanted to focus on budget. And stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to talk about some other very interesting things that have to do with home renovation. And again, a special thanks to my friend, Eddie Friend from Excalibur Builders. And stay tuned tomorrow as Eddie comes back and we will talk a little further about this.